Hey everyone, welcome to Make Room. This video on game making is a behind the scenes look at the Instructor game we're building for the April 2020 challenge. In this video, I'm going to talk about pre-production. This is the phase of game making where you come up with your game idea, also called a game concept, and make decisions about the genre, platform, and core mechanic for the game. So as I was thinking about the kind of game I wanted to make for this challenge, I started with what I already had. What I had was the theme for the challenge, which is, of course, Alone Together. And the Alone Together theme is very much about the times we're living in right now. The global pandemic, the fact that we're both isolated and united in this time of worldwide crisis, and the fact that our daily experiences for almost everyone in the world are fundamentally different from anything we've ever experienced. Thinking about that, I said, of course, like everybody else, I want to make a game that fits that theme. And fitting with the theme, I also want to do something unique to my own perspective and my own life experience. And of course, I also want to use the tools that I've already set up for everyone doing the game making challenge to move on with game development successfully. One of those tools, as it turns out, is this cat you see here on the screen. This cat is one of 3 player avatars I've suggested that our folks use for this challenge throughout the month of April. In addition to my cat, we also have a first-person avatar set in a furnished cabin and a third-person car with an idea of doing a delivery driver type game. But I was inspired by the idea of using this cat. And when I was teaching on a Twitch live cast a couple of weeks ago, one of my students actually suggested that we use a version of this cat, but switch the mesh out for a dog and do a game where you had to take the dog outside and go on a walk in your neighborhood. He said that, in fact, he does have a dog and needs to walk his dog every day in his neighborhood. And he was inspired by just the feelings of difference that were happening when he goes to walk his dog now versus the way it was before. So I was really inspired by that suggestion, and I started to think about my own experiences of going outside. Now, I live in Manhattan, and one of the places you go to take leisure time in Manhattan, of course, are its innumerable parks. And since the pandemic started, going to the park has been a pretty stressful experience. So, along the lines of walking a dog outside, I started to think about the idea of doing a game set in a Manhattan park. I wanted to do something third person just to show the feeling of being a person out there in the park. I could have said I wanted to do first person, but I had an idea for gameplay that would make third person a good choice. What I wanted to do was build a third person avatar, set that avatar in a park, and have my gameplay center around the idea of walking around a park, seeing the beauty of spring, but having to avoid other people in the park while you're doing it, which is a really unusual experience. So, what I thought was I could do this by taking the script I've got on this very cat you see here and translating it into an implementation that controls a small, probably low poly person set in a low poly park environment. So that was my basic idea, a third person avatar, a park environment, and a gameplay loop that involves sort of a social distancing stealth where you have to walk away from other people as they walk towards you. And if you get too close, your score or whatever metric I'm using in my game goes down. So, with that concept firmly in my mind, after being inspired by my students and thinking about the tools, I decided it was time to pitch the game to Dan. So anytime you're planning on doing a game project that involves another person, of course, you have to get that person on board with your idea. And I definitely wanted to work with Dan on this because, in addition to being a fantastic Unity developer, I also thought it would really be fun for Dan and I to make a game and show the kinds of game making skills and interests we have to all of our students at Make Room.
So after I had come up with my game concept, I sent Dan a message on Slack and said, "Hey, Dan, are you interested in making a game with me?" I described my game concept, communicating to Dan the genre, the platform, and the core mechanic I wanted to use, and said, "Would you be interested in working on this with me?" I'll prototype the basic scene and get the avatar implemented, and you can work up some of the key systems that would contribute to getting gameplay up and running. Dan listened and said he thought it sounded like a good idea, which was great news for me because if Dan said I'm not interested, it would be back to the drawing board and I'd have to come up with a new concept that was probably a little bit more appealing. So in this case, for me, pitching Dan was a soft green light for pre-production on this instructor game project. I think I passed the green light. And so in the next couple videos, I'm going to show you how Dan and I got to working on the production phase of our instructor game and how we implemented the idea I came up with. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be talking about the instructor game throughout April, and after April 30th, you'll get to play the finished version.